Good morning and welcome to Criminal Justice in a Nutshell. My name is Dr. John Fisher, and this episode is going to be on the literature review and research. I tried to do this yesterday, but it was 20 minutes long, and YouTube was unable to load it. I tried loading it for hours, it seems. So I'm going to try and keep it under 15 minutes. This is also attached to my class for Research in Criminal Justice for Ashford University. But any research project. I'm on the campus. I'm on the campus of Western New Mexico University today, filming this. And research. I enjoy doing research. It is difficult when you start. It's always difficult to make sure that you remain unbiased and that you do your job as a researcher so that things are better and better for you. So any research project has 5 parts, any real research project. Mostly if you're working on your thesis or you're working on your dissertation, you need 5 parts for your research project, and this is a research class to help prepare you for your master's thesis. So let's cover that. So the first part is your introduction. Within your introduction of any paper, you will establish your problem. You will introduce the project that you're doing and the research topic. You will also establish and qualify and quantify or qualify your research questions and what you're trying to get across to the people, to your audience, whomever that audience is. Okay, part 2 is the literature review, and that's the process, and that was the assignment that you had for this week, was to conduct and do your research project, your literature review. And we'll get back to the literature review here in a minute because that's the basis and the process of today's lecture. The third part is your methodology, and within the methodology, you set up your plan and how you're going to go about collecting the data and coming to a point of data saturation where you have gathered all the data information that you need so that you can come up with and you can develop your results and you can explain your results and you can make your predictions or your conclusions. Part 4 is your findings. Okay, so part 3, you're going to tell me how you're going to do this and how you're going to conduct your project and your research. Part 4, you're going to tell me what you came up with after you've coded all of your information and you've run, if it's a quantitative research project, you've run your T-scores and your S-NOVAs and all of your NOVA scores and all of the different SPSS data. Once you've run all of that, or in the qualitative side of research, once you have coded all of your responses and you've looked for common themes from the different subjects that you've spoken with, you give me your findings, you tell me what you want or what you found. Part 5, the 5th part of your research, is your recommendations, your conclusions, how you think that your research needs to be applied in the future to real world events. And in a nutshell, that's a basic outline view. That is what is inside of a research project. I know going 3 minutes to discuss this makes it seem really easy, but it's not. But the first thing that you start with, you don't start with chapter 1. Chapter 1 comes after chapter 2, or part 2, and part 2 is the literature review, which you guys have been working on all this week. Once you find a topic or you find a subject, you want to start reading everything you can on it, because your literature review, the main point or the main purpose of your literature review is to find the gaps in the literature. Okay, because we don't want to keep redoing the same research over and over and over and over again. You do, because that goes into reliability and validity, and you want to make sure that your research is able to be repeatable. But as a researcher, you want to find the gaps, and you want to find the differences. You want to find what's going on and what we already know. As a researcher, as an academic, it is your job to increase the knowledge base that we have within the world. Okay, and research is how we go about doing that. So in the literature, so let's, for example, my dissertation, my current research topic is on polarization and extremism and hate groups, and my dissertation was on the right-wing militia. And so what I did was I went and bought books. I've got a whole shelf full of books. The enemy of my enemy is my friend. It's a book about that links Islam and radical Islam to the alternate alt-right movement. I've read the Homegrown Terrorists. It's a book that was published out of Britain, but it was about the American militia movement, and a lot of the things written there was written, and a lot of the articles in there are by the militia themselves. The Rise and Fall, the Rise of the Fourth Reich, Madison Grant's book, The Passing of a Great Race. And then I read journal articles on what other academics have had to say about the issue. I went to the FBI, and the FBI has some information and some articles on how a hate group is formed. And I read all of these things. And then what I wanted to do, and what I found, was that there was a disconnect from what academia was telling us and what the media was telling us and what all of the chosen narrative about the militia, what it tells us. And that's a disconnect from what I was learning from reading papers and articles by the militia. And so then I decided that what my project was going to be was, what is the law enforcement perceptions of the right-wing militia and the right-wing militia movement? So I was able to build my boundaries. I was able to find out what's already been done, how it was done, and what was lacking in the evidence and the literature. And by doing that, I was able to then write chapter 1 of my paper. Chapter 2, or part 2, the literature review, is the keystone of any research project that you're going to write. Okay? If your literature review is not good, the rest of your research paper is not going to be any good. Okay? And so what we want to make sure that we ensure and make sure that we do is that we read everything that we can, everything that we can find. Go to the library, go talk to the librarians and get keyword search words to help you find more information about your topic. If you don't find anything about your topic, that's really good, because now you're going into new ventured land. In the literature review, you explain what you've done. I have done searches in these databases, in these libraries. I've used these keywords. This is what I've come up with. This is what I've found. And there's nothing there. And it makes life, excuse me a second. It makes life easier for you. If the literature review is solid, the rest of your research is going to be solid, because the literature review directs where you're going. It establishes whether or not you're using a qualitative version or a quantitative version, or what you're doing. It makes life easier for you. It also, like I said, it identifies the gaps in the literature. It identifies your research questions. Okay, my research question was, what is the perception? What is the law enforcement's perception of the right-wing militia? What I found, my ending results, was that the constitutional right-wing militia is not a threat to domestic security. It flew against everything that we have been told by the choice architecture, by the accepted narrative about how dangerous the militia is. Specifically those Desert Storm vets who come back and they're disgruntled because they're not getting all of the credit or recognition that other veterans coming back from the desert are getting. They're not getting the recognition that the Vietnam vets are getting. And So what the narrative tells us is that these Desert Storm vets are going and they're forming militias and they're fighting against the government. That's not what I learned. When going through my research project, what I learned was the constitutional militia, and I'm making a point, I am differentiating other groups from the constitutional militia. The constitutional militia believes in the Constitution of the United States, in that they believe that every person should own a firearm, period. And every person should be able to use that firearm, and every person should have at least 2 weeks supply of ammunition for those firearms. Okay. But they also believe in the state constitutions. They believe that law enforcement is a product or the responsibility of the state, not the federal national government. So if you're dealing with a constitutional militia member, what you want to do is you want to get the local sheriff involved, because the local sheriff is constitutionally elected, constitutionally appointed. He is the law enforcement agent of the community. So if you involve the sheriff, the constitutional militia will fall in line. The militia and the work with the sheriff's departments. They try to help with the sheriff's departments. The other thing that I learned was that the sheriff needs to make sure that he tracks, controls, understands what militia groups are in his jurisdiction, and that he goes about and ensures that he talks to them and he knows their intentions. A lot of times these guys are very helpful. But the literature review is where you start with all of this, because you cannot learn, you cannot teach unless you read. And reading is part of the literature review. You need to read everything that you can find on that topic. I've given you 7 days to do so. I'm not expecting miraculous things this week. I am expecting you to get a good firm grasp of the literature, what is out there, and what we already know about the topic of your choice. One last point I'd like to say is that whatever you chose today to do your literature review on, you stick with that topic through the end of the semester, because it'll make your job and make your final paper easier to do, so that when we get to week 6 and you start writing your final research paper, that you don't have to reinvent the wheel. You've already done the Chapter 2, you've already done the literature review. So whatever topic you've picked this week, make sure you stick to that topic through the end of the semester. This is Dr. Fisher. It has been Criminal Justice in a Nutshell, the literature review, and conducting research.